So let's jump into the wide receivers. And Jay, we start with Noah Brown here. 2 weeks of no action or nothing coming his way. This week, he's really the guy. 11 targets, 8 catches, 82 yards, and a touchdown. He's got the Browns. He's available in 60% of leagues. I mean, you could argue in a pass-happy offense, no matter who's under center, that this is the number one target right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about how someone was going to have to cook in this offense with Collins out, with Tank Dell out, even though C.J. Stroud was out, and Noah Brown, who was always the favorite to do that, given he's just the best guy that they have left, he went off against the Titans. Now, not a very good defense and secondary in Tennessee, and he will get the Cleveland defenses, which has been the best in the NFL this year. Also important to monitor Nico Collins' status. Looks like he might be trending towards playing. He was warming up on the field against the Titans. Also C.J. Stroud, his return would hugely benefit Noah Brown. But regardless, really, I think Noah Brown has showed a certain just capacity that, he is a viable option no matter what happens with Tank Dell out for the season.
Matthew, is this one of those ones where if, say, Collins plays and you have the matchup against the Browns, do you still think Brown can be effective in this game?
I do, because, look, he's had 3 games this year, literally 3 games this year where he's gotten at least 6 targets. In all 3 games, he scored at least 22 fantasy points, the full screen that you just saw right there, sort of demonstrating that as well. And so I don't know that I think Jay brings up a great point here. The Browns defense is going to be much tougher than what they faced against Tennessee. But I think just the Texans have been a pass-first offense all season long. And with C.J. Stroud back, I don't expect that to suddenly stop. And by the way, there's a chance that if Nico Collins comes back this week, Noah Brown's still the number one. Nico Collins has missed a couple of weeks here, and so and he may get the more coverage. Certainly, I think 6 targets are easily in line for Noah Brown, regardless of Collins being back or not. And he's produced when he's gotten that kind of volume. 100% Noah Brown is, I think, a volume-based low-end wide receiver 2 this week.
Matthew, another guy next up in terms of targets, Tyler Boyd on the Bengals. We think that Jamar Chase will miss the game with the shoulder sprain. That obviously elevates Boyd in a really, really big way against the Steelers on NBC on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, Chase being out is a 27% target share. I mean, like he injured his shoulder. Connor, you can talk a little bit more about the injury when I'm done here on Tyler Boyd. But I'll just say, it's a good matchup regardless. Steelers so far this year have allowed the 5th most yards to the slot, which is obviously where Tyler Boyd lines up the most. When their Chase or Higgins have been out, we've seen Boyd sort of step up as well. Browning obviously has a connection with him on some level. And so without Chase there, again, almost 30% of the team's targets are up for grabs. I think Tyler Boyd becomes really interesting for as long as Jamar Chase is out. And we got some bad news on him yesterday, Connor.
Yeah, shoulder separation for Jamar Chase. Jay, he's expected to miss this week against the Steelers. And if you're in the fantasy playoffs, or just a Bengals fan or just a Jamar Chase fan, even worse, it could go beyond that for a team that they see the Chiefs in 2 weeks as well, a game that you'd really like to have Jamar Chase back for.
Yep, and then they close the season against the Browns, so it's brutal. I also think with Chase, it's not just that he is missing, it's just his gravity in that offense too. They were able to throw the screen passes they did against Indianapolis because of Chase's gravity and the fact that the safeties are playing so high because they're scared of Chase getting over the back. I do think Tyler Boyd will benefit in a huge way against Pittsburgh. One, because of Chase's vacated target share, which Matthew talked about, but then also, Steelers just don't have any safeties left. DeMonte Casey, he's out for the season with a suspension.
Right.
Minka Fitzpatrick's not going to play. That defense turned Gardner Minshew into Joe Montana for an afternoon. Gardner Minshew did whatever he wanted against them. By the way, with no Michael Pittman and no Jonathan Taylor and no Zach Moss. He just did whatever he wanted. So I think the Browning should have success, and Tyler Boyd's going to get a lot of it.
It's a great point about the Steelers. Outside of some flashes from Joey Porter, their rookie corner, they've been thin in the secondary all year. When they lose those safeties, those corners aren't good enough to survive without the safety. It's probably done for him. So that's a big one right there. Our next one here, Joshua Palmer against the Bills. He's available in 71% of leagues. We thought, Jay, he could be eased in coming off IR. That wasn't the case. It was garbage time, but it was still 113 yards and a touchdown in garbage time. He gets the big play. But I say this, Jay, on the Peacock game on Saturday against the Bills, what's stopping him from having another game that's valuable with garbage time? They're 10.5-point underdogs.
Yeah, and Josh Palmer, who's the angel of death for backup producer Pete, because I stomped Pete repeatedly, largely off the back of my boy Josh Palmer, who was the beneficiary of the stickman dealing in garbage time. That was a fantastic pass and catch, by the way. That was a lot more impressive than the 79-yard touchdown, that ball down the left sideline. Now, it doesn't look very sustainable, the stats. He only had 4 targets, and he turned 4 targets into 113 yards and a touchdown, which was really just the wide open, blown coverage 79-yard TD. At the same time, another week off the injury. Expect they will be throwing against Buffalo. And Buffalo, despite what they did against Dallas, it's not like they're an all-world defense with the amount of injuries that they've got at the moment. So I think Josh Palmer is very viable if you are in need.
Matthew, how do you value Palmer, a second game off the IR?
Yeah, probably wide receiver 3 range. Look, the fact, though, is that he's had 5 games this year where he was healthy. The last 5 healthy games that Josh Palmer's played, he's averaged over 15 fantasy points per game. He's had multiple deep targets in all 5 of those games. And it's another week back, another week of him in practice with a stick man. Maybe with Brandon Staley gone, maybe there's a little bit of a lift of the spirit that maybe the Chargers realize, we're all, the general manager and the head coach were just fired. So we're all sort of playing for our jobs right here. Should be a good game against Buffalo. Games exclusively on Peacock, of course. I'm a company man. If you need a subscription to Peacock to watch this game, and you do need a subscription to Peacock to watch this game, you're like, well, how do I get one? Rotopass.com, by the way, my bundling site. You get a bunch of different great fantasy football websites, plus a 12-month subscription to Rotopass. It's a 12-month subscription, by the way. So you can draft, you get it now, and you'll get it all for draft season next year, rotopass.com. I'm a self-company man. But what I would say specifically to Palmer, look, I think he's talented. I think he gets a decent amount of target share. He's had a 20% target share, basically, in the last 5 healthy games he's played. It's him and Keenan Allen is all they really have. We don't expect the Bills to have any problem moving the ball against L.A. So in negative game script, the stick man should be leaning on Josh Palmer. And look, junk time still counts. I mean, as we saw, Palmer is one of those guys that all he needs is sort of one play. So I expect more than 4 targets this week. I expect him to have a nice game.
By the way, off topic, but I just wanted to mention quickly, with the news that Taylor Heinicke is starting over Desmond Ridder, the line just moved 3.5 points in Atlanta's favor. So that's where Desmond Ridder is at the moment, 3.5 points worse than Taylor Heinicke.
Yeah, he's
Falcons now 1-point favorites.
Bottom in most passing categories this year, Desmond Ridder.
Someone get me Lawrence Jackson on the phone.
You'll see him tomorrow.
Good. I want to bring this. I can't wait to bring this up to him because he's been defending Desmond Ridder all year long.
Poor position.
And so, Taylor Heinicke, look, by the way, we'll talk about him when we get to the quarterbacks here in a second, but Heinicke's got a little bit of a gunslinger mentality. Heinicke, I feel like I get it. He wasn't great, but he's better than Ridder. I will go to my grave thinking that he is better than Desmond Ridder, at least at this stage of both of their careers.
Our next
gives
one,
the Falcons a better chance to win.
Our next
Am I
one.
wrong on that, Connor?
No,
Do you disagree with that?
I'm pretty sure there's a show out there from 3 months ago where I said pick up Taylor Heinicke in desperation superflex now because Desmond Ridder will get benched this year. It's probably from September.
Times 2.
Yes, and it's happened twice. Yeah. So not that it's gone great for Heinicke, but I think it will go better for Heinicke.
He's
better.
Heinicke's better.
So
and by the way, I think it's definitely very good news for Drake London, for Kyle Pitts, for Bijan Robinson, for all the players on the Falcons offense that you care about.
For America.
Just because Heinicke's more of again, it's a cliche, but it's true for a reason. He's more of a gunslinger. He's more willing to put the ball in play.
Lawrence will come defend himself tomorrow.
Sure.
Yes, he will be here. So
I can't wait.
Join us tomorrow at 12 p.m., of course, on Peacock. Our next one, Matthew, Commanders wide receiver Curtis Samuel, available in 63% of leagues. You talked a little bit this week how you're scared to play Sam Howell because he's got the Jets' defense. Does Samuel fall into that trickle effect bucket that it's tough to play him because of the Jets' secondary in this one?
I actually don't think so. 3 straight games now with double-digit fantasy points. He's had a 26% target share, averaging over 8 targets a game. And I just sort of think about how you attack the Jets. They're so good on the perimeter with Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. So Curtis Samuel, who is the slot receiver for the Commanders, is somebody that should be open quite a bit. He has some versatility as well. They find different ways to get the ball in his hands. So I do think Samuel, despite the matchup against the Jets, which is not great, I think is still viable.
Yeah, I think as well, just being able to, the fact that he lines up so much in the slot, avoiding DJ Reed, despite his poor game against Miami, and Sauce Gardner, that's the way you want your receiver to be against the Jets.
All right, our next one, Packers wide receiver Dontavian Wicks, available in 97% of leagues, Jay. He's got the Panthers. He's coming off a week with 6 catches for 97 yards. The reason Wicks comes up on this show, he's had a nice season, don't get me wrong. Jaden Reed left Sunday with a toe injury. Christian Watson with a hamstring hasn't practiced since week 13. Christian Watson has missed more time with hamstring injuries now for the last 2 years. Makes Wicks effective in a somewhat capacity here, maybe for Jordan Love?
I think so. I think there's a couple of things. One, there's the vacated volume that you mentioned with the injuries and those guys potentially missing one, if not both, of Reed and Watson. There's also the fact that I just think Dontavian Wicks is good. I like the talent, like what he does out there. Jordan Love, after that despicable game against the Giants, I mean, he wasn't the reason they lost against the Bucs. It was the defense just being atrocious. So he looked better. He was able to put up a decent enough stat line. So I think that Dontavian Wicks, if both of those guys can't go, then he is a wide receiver 3 with upside.
Matthew, how about some... go ahead, Matthew.
I was going to say about Dontavian Wicks, and I agree with you, and I've said this before, I like, if you're in one of those leagues where you can keep play, if you're in I'm sure in any kind of deep dynasty league, he's already been rostered, but if you're in one of those leagues where you can keep, you're a deeper keeper league, I like Wicks over Romeo Doubs next year. I'll just sort of say that, because I agree with what you guys are saying in terms of the talent. We've talked about Wicks a few times over the last couple of weeks here. You don't love the matchup at Carolina, right? That is a pretty good secondary. But if Watson and Jaden Reed were to miss, Wicks suddenly becomes pretty interesting in a game the Packers desperately need. That's a very important game for Green Bay. The other thing I'll say here is that with any of these guys, we're talking about Curtis Samuel or Dontavian Wicks or Zamir White, generally speaking, it's the playoffs. And it's the fantasy semifinals. It's week 16. So generally speaking, you're only starting any of these guys if you're desperate. Ideally, you're starting the guys that got you here. And all this is just sort of like whether you're keeping it away from your opponent, whether you're just trying to fortify your bench, what have you. Hopefully none of these guys you need to sort of use. But if you can, or if you have to, here are some names. I just want to sort of couch it, playoffs is a time not to get cute. The one thing I will say, though, I have no issue with this. Sometimes the best offense is a good defense. If you're playing against somebody that lost Jamar Chase and they're looking through the waiver wire and, oh, my God, look at that Zoom. That's hilarious. I don't even know how I did that.
Terrifying.
But that's new. I don't even know if I can recreate that. Can I recreate that? Anyway, apparently not.
Get waving your arms around there. Maybe something will happen.
Anyway.
Kool-Aid Man just kicks the wall behind him.
Oh, what happens if I do thumbs down? I don't know. Anyway.
Great television.
There we go. But at any rate, what I was just going to say is that you're just ideally not using these guys except in dispersed. What I was going to say is defense. If somebody in your league needs a wide receiver but you don't, pick up a wide receiver just to block that person. I have no issue with that. Again, it's sometimes the best offense is a good defense.
And doing that could make them look in deeper league targets. Let's look at the Week 16 waiver wire targets in very, very deep leagues in those scenarios. Pop Douglas against the Broncos, 79% available. Parker Washington against the Bucs, 95% available. Rashid Shaheed against the Rams, 53% available. And Demarcus Robinson, who's had a nice little stretch here, Matthew, against the Saints, he's 92% available.
3 straight games with at least 40 yards and a touchdown for Demarcus Robinson. Parker Washington, especially given the injury to Zay Jones, that looked pretty bad on Sunday night, and obviously they're already missing Christian Kirk. So Parker Washington becomes kind of interesting too. I'm a big fan of Pop Douglas in terms of his talent, and feels like after Hunter Henry, he's the pass catcher on the Patriots you want the most.
Let's recap Barry's Week 16 top wide receiver waiver targets. Noah Brown leads the list, followed by Tyler Boyd, as Jamar Chase was expected to miss this week with the shoulder separation. Joshua Palmer, Curtis Samuel, Dontavian Wicks, Parker Washington, Rashid Shaheed, and Demarcus Robinson in some deeper league target format.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotorWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.